The Cowboys like to say that talent acquisition is a 365-day thing. Well, now they're looking into UFL talent to improve the roster and maybe even fix a couple of underrated needs. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with you guys in between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with quick hitting videos such as this one. On Tuesday, the Cowboys worked out 4 UFL players. All of them happen to be defenders as in defensive players. Some of them are DC defenders, right? Playing for that team. That's what I meant. Playing on defense. 2 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks is the tally for the Cowboys workouts today. And there are some interesting names in there. Specifically, 2 former first-round cornerbacks were in Dallas working out for the Cowboys. And there is one in particular who is actually the kind of bet that the Cowboys like to make. I'm talking about a low risk, high reward gamble where you've got a player that has had some trouble in the past. And I'm talking about 2 kinds of trouble with this particular player, quarterback DeAndre Baker. He's had off the field drama with, legal stuff, and he's also had injuries to worry about. So let's dive right into it because let's talk about it. First and foremost, I do want to give some context. There is a bunch of UFL players out there getting worked out or having contact with NFL teams. And it does seem like the talent that the UFL has is going to intrigue a lot of NFL teams. And I've seen mostly like kickers up to now, which would fit with what happened in earlier years. And the Cowboys are actually one of the pioneer teams when it comes to adding talent from spring leagues, because you've got Brandon Aubrey, right, who was the Birmingham Stallions standout on special teams, but you've also got Kevontae Turpin, who was a league MVP for the USFL. So special teams guys, if you will. And we're seeing a lot of teams look into the kickers. The Commanders, for example, division rivals, have had 3 workouts with different kickers. They signed one of them, Ramiz Ahmed, and then they are working out Jake Bates, who is the guy that has gone the most viral among football fans. Even if you don't watch the UFL, chances are you know who Jake Bates is now by now, because he's hit like 3 60-plus yarders over the course of the 2024 UFL season, which is currently in the postseason. Regular season is over. Not exactly sure with where they are at right now, but the Commanders worked him out. They worked Jake Bates out, and they worked another guy out. Smith is the name. So that is not a surprise. What is a surprise, though, is that I've seen several names getting workouts where you're like, oh, I remember that guy. You remember Garyon Conley. And you probably remember and DeAndre Baker as well. Because we're talking about former first-round NFL players. And cornerbacks, too. And, man, let's talk about it, man. DeAndre Baker. Let's start with Baker here, who is, of course, somebody that, again, former first-round draft pick, but more specifically, somebody that fits with what the Cowboys like to look for. And I'm going to share my screen right here. Fits with what the Cowboys like, basically, to look into. Because, again, this is a player with low risk, high reward. Man, sorry about that. Profile. Because he is somebody that was once placed on the commissioner exempt list. This was after he was charged with multiple felonies, and that includes an armed robbery. That includes aggravated assault. And this was in May of 2020. It says Chargers. I'm going to have to go ahead and edit that. The charges were dropped later that year, around November. He actually played that same year again. He went to the Kansas City Chiefs, played for them a little bit, and then broke his femur. Now, at the time, if I remember correctly, he's still the second guy ever to break his femur during an NFL game. So it was a gruesome injury and a serious one. that pretty much marked the end of Baker in the NFL, but he was still a former first round player, right? He was a player with the talent, with the measurables, with the upside, but he had the off field drama, and then later he had the injury problems. Basically, that's just buying tickets to get out of the NFL, right? At that point. So Baker now aiming to make his comeback, as according to Patrick Walker from DallasCowboys.com, Baker actually worked out for the Cowboys today. And it seems like the Cowboys are interested in adding a former first round cornerback from the UFL. Now, that interest becomes a little bit more intriguing to me because it's not the only corner that they are working out. They're also working out Garyon Conley, who has a different kind of context. Conley did have some off the field issues, but most of that happened before the NFL draft, which means that it didn't happen during his NFL days, which means that the NFL couldn't really basically investigate him and suspend him because it happened before his NFL days. But Garyon Conley was accused of rape when he was a college football prospect headed to the NFL draft. Those charges were never filed. There was a grand jury. They issued a no bail on all charges, so he was off the hook for that. And then no more off-field drama when he was a pro. However, he did run into a slew of injuries that also derailed his career just a little bit. But Garyon Conley was another former first-round cornerback, so you can see the upside there. Now, these are not exactly young corners that we're talking about, so I don't view the Cowboys as looking into them, hoping to find a starter in the future. However, I do think it's an underrated need when you look at the Cowboys roster. The depth at cornerback is just not great. Just on Sunday night, we talked about it within the context of Israel Mukuamu. Because on Sunday's show, I made the argument about switching Mukuamu full-time from safety to cornerback. He's always lived somewhere in between. We've always had some questions about what his position really is, but he's still listed as a safety. He played half and half of the snaps in the 2024 season, so he had half of his snaps at safety, half of his snaps at a corner, and I am of the opinion that the Cowboys would be better off switching him full-time to cornerback. Forget about the versatile aspect of it, because this is Easy's final year under contract, and you need more depth at a cornerback than you do at safety, where you've got two starters in Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and then Juan J. Thomas, Marquise Bell. Talked about this on Sunday, but this is also to show the other side of the coin, which is cornerback. You've got a solid starting trio of Trevon Diggs, Daron Bland, Jordan Lewis. After that, I'm not sure who is cornerback for the Cowboys, and that might be Nashawn Wright. It might be Eric Scott Jr. It might even be fifth-round draft pick Kalen Carson or Josh Butler. Speaking of spring athletes, right? I wouldn't bet on Josh Butler becoming the Cowboys' number 4 cornerback. My point, though, is there's not a clear-cut number 4 on that room. The competition would be wide open in training camp. So if you bring in a first-round talent like Baker, like Conley, that just played in the UFL, I'm betting they would have a shot at making the roster. With some caveats. Number one is the workload. Remember when Kevontae Turpin just got to Dallas, he didn't work on offense. And one of the reasons that the Cowboys offered back then was that he had already dealt with a season's worth of playing time. So he had already played in the USFL. How could he play on offense in the NFL and basically play 20 plus games in the same year? That would be a big question mark if you sign one of these dudes. But if they can play, man, they can play. And I will respect the Cowboys for looking into it. Now, that's not it. There was also a linebacker, 2 linebackers that they worked on, but one of them was essentially the best linebacker that the UFL had in 2024. And I'm going to show you his numbers here. And I'm also going to show you what the UFL experts are saying, because chances are a lot of us did not follow the UFL all that closely. There's only so much football you can be a diehard fan of. And this is from Louis Bink, what we're seeing on the screen right now. And he said, no defensive player in the UFL has made more impact plays than Willie Harvey this season. He's been all over the field in all facets of the game. This is a tweet during the season. He said, leading the UFL in pass defended, being an elite blitzer, and leading the Battle Hawks defense in tackle. In tackles, I do have the numbers for you as well. He finished with a league high 76 tackles, and this is including every position. 9 tackles for loss. That's number 2 among all defenders. And he had much more. He added 2 forced fumbles, which was tied for first in the UFL. Deflected 6 passes, which was 6th best, and that is including defensive backs. Among linebackers, he was number 1. And additionally, racked up 4 sacks. Now, you look at some of the highlights, and some of those sacks there's one where he's a free rusher through the A gap, but there's some in which he does need to get some work in and then get to the quarterback. I will mention that Willie Harvey has had NFL experience. Very few of it. I'm not going to act like it's a whole lot. He had, what was it? 4 games for the Cleveland Browns. And he had 2 in 2019, had another 2 in 2021. So that's very limited NFL experience. But it's also important in the sense that this is not a pipe dream prospect that the Cowboys are chasing. It's not like even Kevontae Turpin when they got him on the team, because these are guys that have already been in the NFL, that have already been touted as first-round prospects. Not Harvey, but the other guys. And then Harvey is somebody that already has NFL games on his stat sheet. I do think that matters. And again, specifically, because you're not looking into them for them to be a starter for your team. You're looking for them to be backups. Like, let's talk about Willie Harvey very quickly and what his context in the Cowboys would be. He wouldn't be bidding Maurice Liafo out of his spot on the depth chart, nor Eric Kendricks or Overshown or Clark. But chances are the Cowboys walk into the 2024 season with 4 linebackers on the roster. They might want a 5th body in there during the regular season. And somebody like Willie Harvey could be that guy. He could be. Now, that's not it. The Cowboys also looked into yet another linebacker, and that is Noah Dawkins, who had brief stints with the Bengals, the Buccaneers, the Jets, and the Chicago Bears. Now, let me be clear. None of these guys have signed with Dallas. They worked out for the team on Tuesday, and over the next few days, we'll see if somebody sticks. For now, though, the Cowboys have a very high batting average when it comes to signing spring professionals, but those 2 have been hits because of special teams. So we'll see what happens with these cornerbacks, with these 2 linebackers. And in the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and have a good one. Remember, on Thursday, Skywalker still joins the show for an A to Z Sports Dallas crossover. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.